At the heart of Europe, one country isolated itself from the entire world. Albania trusted no one, not the West, not the East. Why did this nation choose total isolation? This question takes us back to the turbulent years after World War II. Albania, a small nation on the Adriatic Sea, had a long history of being controlled by larger powers. It was part of the Ottoman Empire for centuries. Then it faced invasions during the World Wars. This history created a deep desire for independence. The Albanian people wanted to control their own destiny. They did not want to be pawns in the games of bigger countries. This desire for self-reliance would shape the nation's future in extreme ways. The end of World War II brought a new political landscape to Europe. The continent was dividing into two camps: the capitalist West, led by the United States, and the communist East, led by the Soviet Union. This was the beginning of the Cold War. Most countries had to pick a side, but Albania would eventually choose to stand completely alone. Its leaders believed that both sides were dangerous. They saw the West as imperialist and the East as revisionist, meaning it was not following true communism. This unique path was not chosen by the people in a free vote. It was forced upon them by a powerful and determined leader who had his own vision for the nation. To understand Albania's isolation, we must first understand its context in the Balkans. This region has always been a crossroads of cultures and empires. It is a place where East meets West. For Albania, this geographic position meant constant pressure from its neighbors. Italy, Greece, and Yugoslavia all had interests in Albania. The country's leaders felt surrounded by potential enemies. They believed that the only way to protect Albania's sovereignty was to build a wall around it, both physically and ideologically. This deep-seated fear of foreign interference became the central policy of the new government that came to power after the war. It was a policy that would last for decades. This decision to isolate was not a sudden one. It happened over many years, step by step. Initially, Albania allied itself with other communist countries. But these alliances were temporary and filled with mistrust. The Albanian leadership was always searching for ideological purity. They believed their version of communism was the only correct one. Any deviation by their allies was seen as a betrayal. This rigid thinking led to a series of broken relationships. Albania first broke with Yugoslavia, then the Soviet Union, and finally China. Each break pushed the country further into solitude until it had no allies left in the entire world. Albania had become an island in a sea of perceived enemies. The architect of Albania's extreme isolation was Enver Hoxha. He was a charismatic and ruthless leader who ruled the country from 1944 until his death in 1985. Hoxha came to power as the head of the Albanian Party of Labor, the country's communist party. He had been a partisan leader during World War II, fighting against the Italian and German occupations. This experience made him a national hero for many. It also filled him with a deep distrust of all foreign powers. He believed that outsiders had only ever brought trouble and suffering to Albania. He was determined to build a country that could defend itself against any threat from anywhere in the world. Hoxha's ideology was a very strict form of Marxism-Leninism, often referred to as Hoxhaism. He believed he was the true heir to Joseph Stalin. He saw himself as the defender of pure communist principles. When other communist leaders like Yugoslavia's Tito or the Soviet Union's Khrushchev introduced reforms, Hoxha accused them of betraying the revolution. He saw their attempts at reform as a return to capitalism. This ideological rigidity was the main reason for his foreign policy decisions. He did not trust anyone who did not follow his exact interpretation of communism. This made alliances impossible to maintain for long. The leader's paranoia grew over the years. He saw enemies everywhere, both outside and inside Albania. He was convinced that capitalist and imperialist powers were constantly plotting to invade his country. He also believed that so-called revisionist communist states wanted to overthrow his government. This constant fear led to extreme measures. He created a powerful and feared secret police, the Sigurimi, to watch the population. Anyone suspected of disloyalty could be arrested, imprisoned, or executed. This created a climate of terror where people were afraid to speak their minds, even to their own family members. Hoxha's personal fears became the nation's policy. Enver Hoxha's distrust was not limited to political enemies. He was deeply suspicious of any foreign influence, including culture, music, and fashion. He wanted to create a purely Albanian culture, free from what he called bourgeois and decadent Western influences. He also distrusted neighboring countries. He had border disputes with Greece and a very tense relationship with Yugoslavia. He believed Yugoslavia wanted to absorb Albania and erase its identity. This fear of his neighbors, combined with his global paranoia, pushed him to turn Albania into a fortress. The country was to be completely self-reliant, needing nothing and no one from the outside world. Albania's journey into total isolation happened in stages. Each stage involved breaking ties with a former ally. The first major break was with Yugoslavia in 1948. After World War II, Albania was very close to Yugoslavia, which was led by Josip Broz Tito. The two countries had strong economic and political ties. There were even plans for Albania to become a part of the Yugoslav Federation. However, Enver Hoxha grew to resent Tito's influence. He felt that Yugoslavia was trying to dominate his country. When the Soviet Union, under Stalin, denounced Tito, Hoxha quickly sided with Stalin. He cut all ties with Yugoslavia and declared it an enemy state. The next major break was with the Soviet Union itself. After Stalin's death in 1953, the new Soviet leader, Nikita Khrushchev, began a process of de-Stalinization. He criticized Stalin's personality cult and his brutal policies. He also sought better relations with the West. Enver Hoxha was horrified. He saw Khrushchev as a traitor to communism. He accused the Soviet Union of becoming revisionist and abandoning true Marxist-Leninist principles. The relationship between the two countries grew colder and colder. The final break came in 1961. Albania was expelled from the Warsaw Pact, the military alliance of Eastern Bloc countries. Albania was now isolated from its former Soviet allies. After breaking with the Soviet Union, Albania found a new and powerful ally, China. At the time, China, under Mao Zedong, also had a poor relationship with the Soviets. China and Albania became close partners, united by their opposition to both Soviet revisionism and American imperialism. China provided Albania with huge amounts of financial aid, technology, and military equipment. For a while, it seemed Albania had found a reliable friend. The country was often called China's unsinkable aircraft carrier in the Adriatic. This alliance allowed Hoxha to continue his hardline policies without collapsing the economy. It was a strange partnership between two very different countries. However, this alliance with China did not last either. In the 1970s, China's foreign policy began to change. After Mao's death, and even before, China started to open up to the West. The visit of United States President Richard Nixon to China in 1972 was a turning point. Enver Hoxha saw this as the ultimate betrayal. He felt that China was now dealing with the main imperialist enemy. He publicly criticized the new Chinese leadership. In 1978, China, tired of Hoxha's constant criticism and demands, cut off all aid to Albania. This was the final step. Albania had now broken with the West, with Yugoslavia, with the Soviet Union, and with China. It was truly alone in the world. Nothing really symbolizes Albania's paranoia and isolation more than those concrete bunkers. Starting in the 1960s and continuing into the 1980s, Enver Hoxha ordered this massive bunkerization program. The government actually built hundreds of thousands of these small, dome-shaped concrete structures all over the country. The exact number is debated, but it's estimated to be over 173,000. They were placed everywhere, on beaches, in the mountains, in city parks, and even in farm fields. They were designed to protect the country from an invasion that Hoxha believed was always just about to happen. He expected a coordinated attack from both NATO and the Warsaw Pact at the same time. The construction of these bunkers was a gigantic undertaking for such a small and poor country. It used up a vast amount of resources, including concrete, steel, and labor. This was money and effort that, honestly, could have been used to build houses, schools, or hospitals. The design was based on the experiences of partisans in World War II. They were meant to be machine gun nests and artillery positions. The plan was that every citizen would basically be a soldier, ready to run to the nearest bunker to defend the motherland. This strategy was called People's War. It meant that the entire population had to be militarized and prepared for constant conflict. The bunkers became a permanent feature of the Albanian landscape. They were a constant physical reminder of the government's message: the world is dangerous and we are surrounded by enemies. For the people of Albania, the bunkers were just part of daily life. Kids played on them. Farmers used them to store tools or shelter animals. But they also represented the fear and paranoia that really defined the era. They showed how the regime's ideology was literally set in stone. The bunkers were a powerful symbol of a country that had turned its back on the world and was looking inward, preparing for a war that would never come. This massive project wasn't just about defense. It was also a form of social control. It kept a large part of the population busy with military training and construction. It reinforced the idea that the nation was under constant threat, which helped justify the regime's harsh rule and the lack of personal freedoms. The bunkers were supposed to be proof that the leader was protecting the people. But in reality, the invasion never happened. The bunkers were never used for their intended purpose. Instead, they became monuments to a period of intense fear and isolation, a costly and strange legacy of a leader's deep-seated paranoia. Daily life for ordinary Albanians under Enver Hoxha's rule was totally defined by secrecy, fear, and complete state control. The government controlled every aspect of a person's life, from where they worked to what they were even allowed to think. The secret police, the sigurimi, were everywhere. It's estimated that 1 in 3 Albanians either worked for the sigurimi or was an informer. People were encouraged to spy on their neighbors, their colleagues, and even their own family members. Just a careless word or a joke about the government could lead to interrogation, imprisonment in a labor camp, or something even worse. This created an atmosphere of deep mistrust and silence. Propaganda was just a constant presence. The state controlled all newspapers, radio, and television. The news was filled with praise for Enver Hoxha and the Party of Labor. It spoke of great economic successes and the strength of the nation, and it constantly warned of the dangers of the outside world. Western culture was portrayed as decadent and evil. Listening to foreign radio stations was actually a serious crime. Books from other countries were banned. The goal was to create a new socialist man who was completely loyal to the party and its leader. Any form of individual expression that didn't fit the official mold was totally suppressed. Freedom just did not exist. Albanians weren't allowed to travel abroad. The borders were sealed and heavily guarded. Anyone trying to escape risked being shot. Religion was also completely banned in 1967. Albania was declared the world's first officially atheist state. Churches and mosques were closed, destroyed, or turned into warehouses and sports halls. Priests and imams were arrested, and even practicing religion in private was really dangerous. Even personal choices like names were controlled. The government published a list of approved Illyrian names, and parents were discouraged from giving their children religious or foreign-sounding names. Despite all these hardships, people still tried to live their lives. They found small ways to resist, often in secret. They might listen to Italian or Yugoslav radio at a super low volume, just hoping to catch a popular song. They would share whispered jokes and rumors. But life was a struggle. There were constant shortages of food and basic goods. People had to wait in long lines for bread, milk, or soap. The promise of a prosperous socialist society never came true. Instead, Albanians lived in poverty and fear, cut off from the rest of the world and under the watchful eye of a totalitarian state that controlled their every move. As the decades went by, Albania's isolation just became even more pronounced. While other countries in the Eastern Bloc experienced some periods of change or limited openings, Albania stayed frozen in its Stalinist past. In the 1980s, the Soviet Union, under Mikhail Gorbachev, started the reforms of glasnost, meaning openness, and perestroika, or restructuring. These changes sent waves across Eastern Europe, leading to protests and revolutions. But in Albania, the regime just held on tight. Enver Hoxha died in 1985, but his successor, Ramiz Alia, continued his policies of isolation, even though there were some very minor and cautious economic reforms. The country basically remained a hermit kingdom. Albania's relationships with its immediate neighbors were hostile or just didn't exist at all. The border with Greece was tense, marked by ideological opposition and historical disputes. The relationship with Yugoslavia was even worse. Hoxha saw Yugoslavia as a dangerous enemy and the leader of revisionism. The large Albanian population in Yugoslavia's province of Kosovo was a constant source of tension. Hoxha tried to present himself as the protector of all Albanians, but his isolationist policies meant he could offer little real support. The borders were sealed so tightly that even contact between families living on opposite sides was impossible. Even other socialist countries that weren't aligned with the major powers were kept at a distance. For example, Romania, under Nicolae Ceausescu, also had an independent foreign policy and often clashed with the Soviet Union. You might think Albania and Romania would find common ground, but Hoxha's rigid ideology just prevented any meaningful alliance. He saw Ceausescu as just another revisionist who didn't follow the true path of communism. Albania trusted no one. It didn't participate in international sports events like the Olympics. It wasn't a member of most international organizations. It was honestly a self-imposed exile from the global community. This extreme isolation had a really profound effect on the Albanian people's understanding of the world. An entire generation grew up knowing only the official propaganda. They were told that Albania was a socialist paradise, and the rest of the world was a miserable place full of poverty, crime, and exploitation. They had no way to verify any of this information. They had never seen a foreign tourist, read a foreign newspaper, or watched a foreign film that wasn't approved by the state. When the communist regime finally began to crumble at the end of the 1980s, Albanians would emerge into a world they barely recognized and honestly didn't understand. The fall of communism in Albania in 1991 was, well, chaotic and really difficult. After nearly 50 years of total isolation, the country was just completely unprepared for the transition to democracy and a market economy. The state-controlled economy collapsed almost overnight. Factories closed, and hundreds of thousands of people lost their jobs. The country was one of the poorest in Europe. There were severe shortages of food, medicine, and electricity. The infrastructure was crumbling after decades of neglect. The bunkers that were supposed to protect the nation were useless against these new enemies: poverty and social breakdown. The social challenges were just as great as the economic ones. Albanians had to learn how to live in a free society. After decades of being told what to think and do, the concept of individual choice was totally new and honestly overwhelming. The country experienced a massive wave of emigration. Thousands of people desperately tried to leave, hoping for a better life in Italy, Greece, and other Western countries. Famous images from this time show overloaded ships full of people trying to escape. This brain drain deprived the country of many of its youngest and most skilled citizens, which just made the process of rebuilding even harder. Reconnecting with the world was a slow and painful process. Albania had to build diplomatic relationships from scratch. It had to join international institutions and learn to follow international laws and norms. The psychological scars of isolation ran deep. People had to unlearn decades of propaganda and come to terms with the truth about their own history and the outside world. The legacy of the Sigurimi also created lasting social divisions. The opening of the secret police files was a painful process, revealing how neighbors and friends had spied on each other. Rebuilding trust within the society was a major challenge. Today, Albania is a very different country. It's a member of NATO and a candidate for European Union membership. Tourists now visit the beaches that were once guarded against invasion. The bunkers are being transformed into cafes, art installations, or just removed. However, the struggles of the post-communist transition aren't over. The country still faces challenges with corruption, organized crime, and economic development. The path from total isolation to full integration into the world has been long and difficult. The story of Albania serves as a powerful lesson about the consequences of fear, paranoia, and cutting a nation off from the rest of humanity. Was this extreme isolation a form of protection, or was it a national disaster? We invite you to share your opinions on this complex and honestly fascinating chapter of European history.